this video, I just want to speak on a experience that happened to me, which if that experience wouldn't have happened in that space and time, then I wouldn't be able to speak on this matter. I wouldn't have even thought of the idea. So it's funny how the entire structure at that time, and of course it's always something, right? But the structure itself was meant to be a negative structure. It was meant to be ill intent, a toxic environment. But I ultimately turned into something positive based off of the experience. So I became the alchemist. I took the bad and I turned it into something good. So I guess you can say it's a form of magic. And we all have that power. It's nothing that is forbidden or something that is demonic or however you want to slice it. Whatever they say about that, it's you, and we have to embrace that. But we don't. And as I go deeper into the experience, you'll see why that's the case on many levels. Now, you see the board. Before I even get to the experience, I have to break down the board for what it is. Because if I don't break down the board, then everything else is going to sound like it's alien. It's going to sound like it's something that's separate from you. You're not going to be able to follow where I'm going. But I promise you, and this is the reason why I'm going to speak on this experience later on. That's going to be me giving a example of what I'm speaking on right now as far as the board is concerned. So to keep things, to keep a cap on things, because there's no cap, right? There's no limits. It's infinite, but you can see the board has its limits. But mind you, you can step off the board. You can leave that space at any given time if you realize that you can do that. See, what's going on here is that the individuals themselves don't realize that that is even possible because they are so deep down in the illusion to where they truly believe that that square is the only square in the universe when the entire board is a square. Outside of the board is squares. On other boards are squares. And ultimately, like I said, when you step off the board, when you really start to realize that you can do so, you realize that there are other boards, as I was saying, and but most importantly, you realize that it's infinite amounts of space, infinite amount of squares that you can step on. So how did it get to a point where humanity as a whole is stuck on this one board? Imagine all of us trying to fit on this one board and say that's the end all be all. And not only are we trying to fit on this one board, the squares that we have been born on, we're all trying to fit on that square. All of humanity on one square. Because we've been told that that's the only square that's out there. Anything else is blasphemy. Anything else is is crazy talk. But at one point in time in the past, the the board itself was a square, a whole square, a united square. It had not yet been divided. So let's just say at one point of time the entire board was black, and then there was a split. And once it started to fracture itself, this is where we are. This is where, or the result, anyways, of the division of the original square. Again, the board itself is an illusion, but let's just keep it here because this is where we are. So now that we've been told that this is the only square in the universe for man and woman, whatever square you're on, we hold on to that. We cling on to that mentality. The square program, the square illusion, the square mentality. We hold on to that deeply. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's not a problem. You can stay on your square forever and never take a step off. The problem comes in when we're all doing the same exact thing. That's the problem. And so now that we've all agreed to do that, because that's the only way to live in the world, to live on the board, to live on your square is to live or to experience life. If you ever so happen to step off of the square, you're dead. So we all stay on a square. So we have been shrunken down to this tiny square. Mind you, illusion, illusions, more illusions. Now, this is something that's been taught to us, mind you, again. And to take it a step further, like I said, at one point in time in the past, we knew what the truth was. Now we're all covered in lies. Now we're all trying to piece things back together to get back to some type of truth. But that's on the macro. That's something that was yesterday's news. So when you come into the world, understand that that's yesterday's news. What I'm saying is that the child is the truth of the world, and you can see how that gets twisted when the child starts to experience life and walk into the dividing of the world, the differences of the world, the separations of the world. So while the adults are priding themselves in doing the right thing and being just and being righteous and being all of these things of positive nature, positive reinforcement, we're doing the right thing. We got everything figured out. You have to understand that you yourself have been indoctrinated into this illusion. The illusion itself is when you cross over to the other side, from child to adult. That's when things become suspect, very. The child can see the board for what it is. The child can skate across the board. The child has no limitations on the mind. It's not until the child starts to grow up that the limitations start to weigh down on the mind. The locks. As adults, we're already locked in. So that tells you that it's a big problem here. This is why this is a big problem, because all of us believe wholeheartedly that the square that we stand on is the only square out there, and we're telling the kids that are coming up, the children that are coming up, that you need to stay on your square and never get off, because if you get off, you're dead. That's a program because that was taught to you and taught to your past generations. So what are we doing here? So there's a process to the illusions. There's steps to this. Step one, level one, the square itself, what you see before you. My square, his square, her square, their squares, whatever. Stay on your square. Don't get off, or you're dead. So you can imagine that this is where a large percent of us lives. Let's just say 90% of us lives on this square. It's not a bad thing. It's just become the norm now. That's the main issue. We need to have more balance. So what am I saying? The fact of the matter is this: since we are afraid to step off of the square because we've been taught that no good can come out of that, if we do so, we stay there, and this is the result in real time. Everybody walking around confused, not knowing themselves. Everybody walking around not having a clue, not having an idea on what is taking on a grand scale of things, which is fine. It's cool. You need people to be on all of the levels. I'm just saying that too much of anything is bad for us. Second level, you realize for some strange reason, whatever that reason is, everybody's experiences are different. We all step off the square for different reasons. But once you do that and you don't die, now it's going to raise questions. Now you're going to your thought process is starting to erase. Like the way that you perceive the board itself is starting to leave you because now your perception has changed because you're alive still. You didn't die. You didn't go to hell. And sure enough, it's not forbidden. So now that you are walking on the board, you're going to these other squares. And so you're lighting up the board again because the board vanished. As you started to believe that this was life, this is what it is, since we all agreed to it, forceful, but nonetheless, we agreed to it. You don't see the board. This is why people are afraid to step up because we fear the unknown, we fear the uncertainty. So all we see is darkness. But we come from darkness, darkness lives within. So what are we fearing? Why are we so why are we so afraid? Anyways, you're lighting up the board now. And so as you continue to light up the board, you'll find your new home. And a lot of people will get comfortable there. A lot of people will say, this is better than where I was, so I'm good here. This is it for me. Even if it's just one step over, this is fine, which is fine. Like I said, on all levels, there has to be a certain, it has to be in sync with one another. It has to be balanced. So you don't need, okay, let me just say it like this. Right now, where we stand, as I said, on the first level, a large percent of us, 90%. The next level, 6%. And then the third level, which again, the board itself is an illusion, but just keeping things into perspective, 4%. So on the third level, you start to realize that you can skate across the board again. So you literally just have made your trip around 0 to 360 back to your square, back to ground zero. Again, it's fine. Whatever level you're on, it does not matter. That's not a issue because it has to be balanced. What I'm saying is that right now it's not balanced. So we need more of us to have the courage to have more experiences that's going to require us to step off of the square with caution. You take your time. It's baby steps to everything. You don't want to just rush off because just by you rushing off because you think you're going to die, because you think you're dead based off of that program, based off of that bombardment on the psyche, you could kill yourself just by rushing straight off the square, the first one, because you have wholeheartedly believed that is something that is going to happen to you. So fear kills, literally. So to get on to the experience, because I wasted a lot of time with this speaking, but hopefully now I can speed through. And I definitely don't want to waste too much time on the experience itself. I just want to give an example on what I'm speaking on now, how it relates to the breakdown of the board. So in a space, toxic space, meant to be toxic on purpose, there was an individual that was speaking his truth from his square. So within 5 minutes, he showed me who he was. He showed me that he had never taken a step off the square. So what does that say to me? That tells me that I cannot communicate with you, that we're going to clash. There's going to be resistance. There's going to be pushback because I understand you, but you don't understand me. You're a human. I'm an alien through your eyes. So I have to remove myself now because I see where this is going. Like I said, negative intent, ill intent, of course. But again, level one, level three, not saying that I'm above thee or higher than thee and thee is lower than me, but that's all I'm saying with that is that it's the truth. You can see this stuff in people. You can see this stuff in yourself. You know who's out there and who is in there. You know yourself if you have taken a step off the square or if you have been on a square your entire existence. So what I'm speaking on isn't anything that's going to boost me up to a certain level. I'm just laying down a foundation for what it is. And I'm sure we can see these things. So removing myself was the best option for sure. We already made the choice, and this is why it's all funny because whether you want to believe this is a random occurrence, a big bang occurrence, we chose to be here, the reincarnation cycle, whatever you believe, whatever you subscribe to, know that the choice of you being born was the first choice. You're here. So now it's meant for you to understand why you made that first choice. To understand that choice is to understand yourself. But of course, stuff isn't thrown out in the open. Like you have to search for these things. You have to find these things. You have to be the pioneer, the loner, the outcast, the reject, or whatever you want to call it. You have to be that in order to know yourself. Because if you're entangled in other energies, those energies will influence you on many levels. As you can see, level one, other energies influence the or the older energies influence the newer energies coming into the world. And so the newer energies just accept a lot of them because they're looking at the older energies and they're saying, well, this is the way things are. So obviously they are doing something right. So they just fall into it. Of course, I got this from The Matrix. The Matrix is a documentary as well. Now, I'm not talking about, taking these movies and really building them up to a certain point in the reality because we will see movies, especially the ones that are able to really see what they are speaking on so many different levels in these movies. And we'll say, okay, we're getting somewhere. You know, back then this stuff wasn't really talked about like that. Now it's a common theme. So it's giving you some type of hope. It's giving you some type of faith that things are going to get better because it's being revealed to us now. We are starting to know more now. But don't forget that it's a movie. Don't get consumed with, these movies and these truths and these movies and all of that. Like that stuff. It's, take what you need and leave the rest. Take what resonates, leave the rest. It's meant to pull on your heartstrings. It's meant to emotionally pull you into that space. So what that does, that keeps you from looking at the reality for what it is. And that's the issue. So with me speaking on the Matrix, I'm not giving it that type of credit. I'm just pointing out a truth that I've realized along my path, my trip around, in my own experience. Moving forward to this picture here, and you know, Serapis. That's who the statue is. If you didn't know, now you know. On one side of the spectrum, and not my best work. Yes, I created it myself, of course, because I couldn't find anything. I mean, I had to do what I had to do. Just wanted to throw that in there because I know the picture is rigged on many levels, bootleg. Anyways, so you look at the black end of the spectrum, and then you look at the white end of the spectrum, and everything else that falls in between. Because it seems like on many levels, you just look at the board in the beginning. Black and white are the main characters. So I have to touch on those aspects because those are the ones that literally control the narrative, control the game on many levels. So on one side, the black, these people that are so-called black or whatever, black people, we think as a collective based off of what's been taught to us through the good books, which are squares. All of the books are squares. Just pointing that out there. We believe that we are a cursed people, that we disobey so much, we did wrong so much, we can't get right. We're trying, but we just kept doing all this wicked stuff according to the good book. So we wholeheartedly take that truth to be the utmost truth. We say to ourselves, we don't want to mess up anymore. We're not going to do what our ancestors did. They messed up a lot. So we're not going to do that. So within our own self, we're not going to move off of our square. We're not going to ask who put the statue there to begin with. We're not going to attempt to move the statue out the way. And we damn sure it's not going to break the statue, shatter it. So, since we're not going to do that, the statue remains. Now, we go to the other side and we look at that side of the spectrum. Hmm. I don't think they are going to challenge it. I don't think they are going to attempt to move it, attempt to shatter it, because the world benefits them on many levels. And it's not a secret. Don't be in denial about this truth because it's everywhere. For example, what color is JC? What color are the Greek gods? What color are the Roman gods? What color are the world leaders? What color are the banksters? What color are the CEOs? What color are the kings and queens? What color are the people in positions of power, the authority figures? Mainly, what color are they all around the world? You see? So now that they have deemed themselves to be the saviors of the universe, the gods of the reality. Oh, forgot one. The movie stars, the ones that play these gods, these good guys, these chosen people, these prominent figures in history. What color are they? Mainly? Right. So now that they have deemed themselves to be the saviors of the reality, the gods of the universe, they don't have to say this stuff publicly. Their actions show it. The structure shows it. So they're not going to move the statue, attempt to shatter it. They're not. Why? When that statue looks like them, they too, in a lot of cases, believe that or believe the story for what it is. And look at the statue. Who does it look like the most? Black man, white man? Tell me. This is a big issue because I'm only touching on the surface level. I'm not talking about the psychology. I'm not talking about the psyche that is implanted, embedded in the individuals on both sides. So on that side, again, people are on their square and not leaving off of the square. So you see, the statue remains. There is no let's move this out the way and get to the root. It's a blockage on both sides. Don't want to continue to beat that drum because it's just something to observe. I mean, this stuff isn't it's no secret. That's what I was saying. It's not something that is just like forbidden or secretive in that manner. Like no, this is a reality. But you can't see that if you're living in denial. You can't see that if you only looking at one side of the spectrum. But if you observe both sides, understand both sides, then you can see these things clearly. But we numb ourselves, we sedate ourselves, we lie to ourselves about the things that are happening in our reality. That's a certain type of psychosis, that's a certain type of sickness that has made its way across the world. We all participate in this, we all play a role in this. Look at what's happening in the world now. Why do you think all this stuff is happening now? What has happened to us in the last 2.5 years, 3 years, whatever, that was breaking the wall. That was breaking the blockage. And now I don't have to speak on all of that. The past, the present, and the future is one and the same. It's one long day. But we've been taught to believe that the past is separate from the present and the present is separate from the future. That there's no value in the past because the past was yesterday. That there's only value in the present because the present is today. And now we look forward to the future. We look forward to going into space. And we pride ourselves in that. Like we really are saying that we have reached the peak of evolution. We are at the tippy top structure of our evolution on many levels. But how is that the case when everything on the ground level is being destroyed? It's crumbling as we speak. So if you're the gods of the universe, if you're the saviors of reality, if obviously, as I just broke down on a surface level, you guys have the world. So if you're running the world, running the power structure, saying who can do what, who can't do what, and the world is crumbling, who's to blame? And it's not about pointing the finger, it's not about the blame game. This is an understanding that I'm speaking on right now. I'm just laying out the foundation, I'm laying out the facts. Nobody that will listen to this can tell me what I'm saying is not true. But yet we just ignore it, act like it doesn't exist, like it's not something that has happened. We went from having certain individuals feeding our babies to alligators to now that thing it's old news. It doesn't matter anymore. This is how far removed we are from ourselves. So can we really call ourselves civilized? Can we really call ourselves human? Because there was a lot of inhumane acts done in the past that is being swept under the rug like it was just fluff talk. No, this stuff actually happened. This stuff is documented. You have people that were speaking on this stuff that are still speaking on this stuff. And we're just ignoring it, saying that, oh, we were just, I don't even know what reason people can give to try to justify what was going on. But of course, there are invisible lines thrown in a timeline to separate us from that space so that we don't have to deal with that. But when you don't, on a micro scale, so let's bring it back to a micro scale now. If you do not heal your past, how can you create a better present and how can you create a better future? So let's take it back up to the macro scale. If we do not deal with the past, how can we create a better present and how can we create a better future? If we are not wanting to deal with that, not wanting to go into that space, what's happening on the macro is a reflection of what's happening on the micro, just to put things into perspective. And it's just because everybody's standing on their square. It's too much going on to keep us distracted, to keep us in that space of believing things are getting better because people are telling us this is the way things are going to get better. So we believe that. The problems that we face today, as I was saying before, when I mentioned the children knowing the truth, they could solve these problems. We could put them in positions of power. In a sense, they're already there, but I mean, if you can catch that. But they can figure these things out. It's not hard. It doesn't take a genius to see through these things. A lot of the problems that we face, we could correct overnight if we chose to do so. But we're not choosing to do so. Why? What is stopping us from making things better overnight? It's so many things that I would have to do is my own or its own video. That has to be its own thing because there's so many things that factors in. But when you clear that stuff out, that fog, you can really see what it really is. But you can't see that if you believe the timeline for what it is. So from start to finish, from the tiny square that we were thrown into to the infinite space that we start to dive into, because once you are on the board, you have to look at it like this. You're this energy ball and you're thrown into a certain space and you're told that this space is supposed to hold your energy, but within your body, with that energy that's within you, it is wanting to break free. It wants to break out, but you're not allowing it to because of the numerous illusions that have been placed above us, on us. So we have to climb out of that so that we can see that there is no board, that it's an infinite space. Man, woman in the universe, your square isn't the only square in the universe. Infinite space. The cosmos is infinite. The board is limitations, restrictions, control, lies, illusions. There are going to be those that will continue to stay in that space, which is fine. But for the ones that have already stepped off, went to the second level, gone to the third level, you guys will be the change in the world. You guys will balance the equations. So I'll close it. With truth comes understanding, and with understanding comes compassion. Take care.